Welcome to That's Joy, the podcast. I'm your host, Cece Calbanero, and I'll be sharing stories of miracles, God moments, and unpacking the truth behind what joy truly means. My friend, when God gives you a direct call on your life, be sure to answer it. Here's to answering my call together. All right, you guys, welcome back to That's Joy, the podcast. I am very excited because I think Kenzie is a fellow 7. You're a 7?
Okay. I test as a 7.
Okay.
I'm a 3.
I could see that. I was going to guess that
I want to
too.
be a 7 so bad that I'm so honored that you would think I'm a 7 because it just ignites me that somebody would place me as a 7.
Oh my gosh. Well, you're going to feel that energy, I think, on the opposite end of this podcast, wherever you're listening. But you guys, Kenzie is the owner and head instructor at True Form, a Legree studio in Franklin, on the way of expansion. And I am just very excited because today we're just going to dive in. I want Kenz to be able to share her joyful noise with y'all. Joyful noise is just our version of good news. Like, what are the good things that are happening? Let's highlight more of that. So, Kenz, you have some little joyful noise in the house.
I do. I feel like you can find joyful noise anywhere.
Yeah.
Even in like the little moments. But right now as a studio, because I know we're going to cover a lot about True Form, we've been a one studio place for quite a while now, and we are taking baby steps towards a second location.
Yeah,
so
you are.
I am so pumped about it. Obviously, these processes take just so long. You think you'll wake up and blink an eye and it happens, and it doesn't. But taking the necessary steps to get there, which I'm so pumped about. So we are looking to take on number 2. I mean, I think number 3 would also be a dream within the next the next year or two. So that is definitely joyful noise when it comes on the work front, for sure.
Come on.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I still have yet to go, and I'm like, okay, we need to make that happen.
Yes.
ASAP Rocky.
We'll get it on down here.
But you guys, Kenz is on the show, and I knew that we needed to have her on because I'm like, man, if anyone is double dosed with joy, that has been you since the moment I met you. Oh. I just think about your green little vest, and I'm like, you are just so joyful and joy-filled. And so I know that throughout this conversation, people are going to feel that too. But I just want to have the people know you. Welcome to That's Joy. If people don't know who Kenzie is, who is Kenzie, and when and how did you find God?
Yeah, wow, that's so good. Well, thank you. I'm so excited. Cece's like in every single sphere of mine, and then now I'm like, oh wait, actually we get to spend time together. Yeah, I think that honestly, I'm so glad you asked this. I feel like over the past couple months, I've been working so hard on really knowing my identity apart from anything that people label me as, And I think it's so easy. I was asked this question a few months ago, and I literally was like, sat down and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to answer who Kenzie is without being like, well, this is what I do for work, or this is, who I hang out with. And it's so easy to attach other identities to then explain who you are. But now this is a great opportunity to practice who Kenzie is. I am from Franklin. So for the most part, I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, moved down here I say from now because no one else is really from here anymore. So grew up here and I was a dancer all through high school, and that really was kind of like my passion. I just loved it. And honestly, the way that I feel like, I found Jesus at such a young age. My parents introduced me to the Lord, and I was your typical VBS child that, did the little pamphlet and was like, yeah, God, I love you. So I don't know a time in my life that I haven't loved God. But kind of stepping into middle school and high school, dance is like kind of was my outlet to worship and my outlet to, really see him through movement and through, now I'm in fitness, but at the time it was just through dance. And so, being a dancer, I was in a secular space, listening to secular music and whatnot. And that really became my ministry. Like those were my people that I was like, oh, they can, I can share about Jesus, and, it might not be in the typical way, but, this is just a way to be a light somewhere. As I kind of stepped into, high school, I swapped high schools going into my senior year. And for me, I think that was really one of the pinnacle moments where I was like, oh, I don't love Jesus because everyone around me loves Jesus. I don't love Jesus because my parents love Jesus. I love Jesus because I love Jesus, because I can't do this season of my life without him. Yeah. And I can't, at that time I was like a new girl in a really private school here. And, there had never been a new girl going into senior year. And I just was like, wow, like who am I? And how do I operate in love and joy and light without, letting the world kind of tempt me or seduce me in different ways or try to tell me who I should or shouldn't be. Yeah. So senior year of high school was kind of that like, no, I love the Lord. And this is why I love the Lord. So, that's kind of my walk with Jesus. And then it obviously, we were talking before this, like it just matures. Like I look at me 5-6 years ago and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am not the same person. The people that knew me then would probably write up a completely different narrative of who I was. Not a bad thing, not a good thing, but now I'm just so much different. I stepped into a dance team my freshman year of college. I continued dancing, and really the pinnacle moment on my story and in how I found even what I'm doing now is because after my freshman year, I had an injury. My back injury kind of didn't allow me to keep dancing, or, it was smart to kind of take a step back. And so I was at the University of Mississippi. Hotty totty.
No way.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
wow.
I was dancing there my freshman year and, loved every second of it. I still, like, my best friend is still there and, had such a great experience, but ended up transferring in 2019 to Belmont. So then I completed off college, sophomore to senior year at Belmont, and, talk about another pinnacle moment of like, okay, Lord, like my identity is not in what I'm quote unquote good at. Like this is, I'm going to trust you. And so stepped into college and, the typical college experience. Belmont was not like, it was pretty sweet in comparison to a typical college, but I was able to really rediscover the Lord in more and more ways there. And, True Form story kind of ties into this as we kind of walk into my senior year. But, the Lord was just so faithful throughout those 3 years and what he allowed me to eventually say yes to. And, now I'm in a season where I, couldn't spend a single day without him. And I think it's been so sweet to see how he's been so good to me just over my whole life, but specifically since I made that, deciding moment of like, no, Jesus, it's you and me till the end, senior year of high school. And then even seeing how that moment happened again, my senior year of college, has been just so sweet.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I love this so much because there's so much of your story that I've yet to even know myself.
I know,
and I'm
so
like,
fun.
wow, all of those little glimmers, I think a lot of people can resonate. And as you're even sharing it, man, I resonate because I think about, I was just on a previous episode recording talking about like how we have the opportunity to enter crossroads where we can decide either what the world is going to tell us to do or walk in the will of God. And I think we get brought to these places and sometimes they're a little bit more unfortunate where we're like, God, I need you, right? And I think that's why some things kind of feel like they're bad, quote unquote, in the world, but it's really to bring us to a better place. And so I think so much about your opportunity to redecide in a way of like, hey, maybe up until this point, I've kind of let my parents or my family or friends kind of shape the way that I view God. But you know what? I want you for all of just who you are, God, and how you and I are. But that's so good. And I think that even your testimony with, I didn't even know that you went to Belmont and how all of the different college experience shook out.
Because you kind of met me during that time where I was like really stepping out of it and in a whole nother world, like in the blink of an eye. So,
oh my gosh. Well, that makes me really excited for you to talk about where you are now. I mean, founder and owner of True Form. And when we were chatting via voice note, you told me that there's a whole God story behind this. So I'd love if you could just share with us like what that God story is and how you even got started like in this industry.
So for those of you who don't know what True Form Fitness is, it's a Legree studio. And when you say Legree, people will look at you like you have 20 heads. But a Legree studio is really Legree is taking over like the fitness industry in more ways than one. But you hear of a lot of girls right now going to Pilates class and going to, their Megaformer workout. And really, Legree is not Pilates, but it's really easily disguised as Pilates. So you're looking at what's called a Megaformer machine. And this machine operates with low impact high intensity movements on spring-based tension, and, really is what all the girls are saying right now when they go to Pilates. They're really actually going to a Legree studio or, a knockoff Legree studio. So I found Legree, this kind of ties into how True Form happened. I found Legree, like I said, I had an injury my freshman year of college. Being a dancer, I was never used to like going to the gym or going to, a cardio workout. I was just, I liked things that elongated me and made me feel like a dancer and all the things. So I had actually taken a class one time it's called Studio Novo. At the time, Studio Novo, or it is still Studio Novo Nashville, and they had 2 locations, one in Franklin and one in off Whitebridge. They still have it in Nashville. And so I found that my sophomore year of college. I came back. I was like, okay, I'm ready to start working out, finding something that won't hurt me, but that'll, benefit my body, especially at a time where I was really rehabbing my back. And so I went to Studio Novo in Nashville, and I took my first class and, just got hooked. I did the first month, student offer, and I was like, okay, this is great. And then just kept going back for more. And I, was kind of bouncing between that and another studio in the area. And I was like, oh, I love this workout. Like there's nothing like this. And there really was nothing like that in Nashville. And so, especially at the time. And so my sophomore year, I just worked out there. My junior year in April, after kind of the world kind of started, because sophomore year was my sophomore year was COVID, so 2020. So then, 2021, April of 2021 is when kind of the world was starting to reopen for sure, especially Nashville.
Yeah.
And
So true.
We were a little early. But so my mom had always been like, Kenzie, I just could see you instructing one day. Like, you should do it. And I was like, Mom, no. Like,
so real.
Yeah. Moms.
Mama
I love her to
knows.
death. But
Mama
I was like, I don't know. And then, Mom does know best. So I reached out to the owner, Anna, at Studio Novo Nashville, and I was like, hey, are you all looking for instructors? And she said, if you go and get trained, we would take you. So in April of 2021, I went out to LA and I got certified in Legree. It's a 24-hour training. It's nothing as intense as a yoga or a Pilates studio. So I went and got trained. It was awesome. I came back. I literally taught a mock class. It was like 30 minutes. I just practiced on her, and she was like, all right, can you teach tomorrow? So I started teaching at Novo Nashville. And this was over the span of like, a good year that I was teaching there. And 6 months into teaching there, I had started to really go into Franklin, because they had 2 studios, Franklin and the Nashville studio. And being from Franklin, I just was seeing so many, women that had either had daughters that danced with me or some friends that started taking, whatever it was, I was there all the time. And I was either taking there, I was teaching there, I was driving from Green Hills into Franklin every single day.
Oh, wow.
And in August of 2021, so not 2022, 2021, I was in my last semester of college at Belmont, and I was studying psychology and social justice. So I was on track to become a family therapist. Like that was that I was like obsessed with it. I literally,
wow.
Which is so funny now, because if you know me, I love to talk. And I had this vision of like, oh, when you're a therapist, you talk all the time. And now I now go to counseling.
Yeah.
Like they don't talk at all. Yeah. They listen.
You listen. You got to be a good listener.
Yeah. So now I'm like,
funny.
God really knew I needed a completely different track in life. But so again, August, I'm in my last semester, killing it, getting ready. I was graduating a semester early, and my employer at Studio Novo calls me. She goes, hey, I love how much you love the Franklin people, and, you're killing it out there. Would you ever want to take it over? And I was at my internship at a psychology internship, and I like looked so confused. If there was a mirror on me, you'd be like, wait, or a camera on me, you'd be like, oh my gosh, she looks like something just bad happened. And I was like, no. I was like, I'm sorry. Like, I actually have an interview for a grad school. Like, I'm going to be a therapist. Like, thank you so much. This is so kind of you to think that I could do that, but that is not in my wheelhouse. And, that just, conversation went and gone. And after a couple of weeks, I ended up following up with her, and I was like, well, maybe we could talk about it, because I just shut it down. And she said, actually we have somebody else that we just found to take it over. We're not actually looking for anyone anymore. I was like, perfect. All right, sweet. So graduate college in December. Now looking back, that was a total mustard seed in my life of like, oh my gosh, little seed planted. So I graduate college in December. of 2021. And in January of 22, me and my two best friends were on a trip in New York, and we were just walking, and I had planned to just take a couple months off. I was just going to do some side work before I started grad school. And I was walking down the street, and in New York, I saw this yoga studio that was like a smoothie bar at the front and then like wellness in the back and saunas and all this stuff. And I just had this light bulb, and I was like, downtown Franklin, like, you know, for those of you listening who know downtown Franklin, it has nothing here in Tennessee. I was like, this needs a Legree studio. I'm going to open up my own. So I had this, like, I was, you know, driven. I had like a fire under me. I was like, I'm doing this thing. So my mom is my dreamer, as you know, I kind of preface that. She's my dreamer. So I like called her. I was like, when I get back from this trip, like me and you, we're meeting at lunch. We're talking, like, I have the best idea. So I met her at lunch. This is end of January. And I was just like, I have the best idea. Do you want to do it with me? It can be this family owned thing, starting this, like, basically it's going to be this whole health studio. So I was like, let's put like a juice bar at the front, and then do like Legree in the middle, and then like I can still do counseling, and I'll be a counselor in the back. Like this, I mean, I was trying to combine it all. Yeah. And so anyways, she was like, we're doing this thing. So kind of to pause on this, at the same time, I had been working with my mentor, and she was like, you know, the Lord really put it on her heart to really start talking to me about like the little moments of my life. And it's always been easy as a 3, like on the Enneagram, I'm an achiever. Like I want to do the right thing. I want to say yes to the right things. I want to be good at everything I do. And so, you know, it was easy for me throughout my life to like make the good Christian girl decision. And she was like, but let's take a step past that. Like, what are the little moments of your life looking like? Like, how do you talk about people with your parents? How do you talk about people with your best friends? How do you, you know, treat the person next to you whenever you're angry that they pulled you or that they cut you off? Like, how do you treat the person in line at the grocery store? Like, what are these little moments of your life? And how can you be a woman of integrity? So I say all that to say that I was really working on like, okay, I want to be humble. I want to be gentle. I want to be honest. And so, you know, we're looking now at February. Me and my mom are dreaming up this whole story. And mid-February comes, and I had a doctor's appointment that I needed to call out of work because I was still working at Studio Novo. I hadn't stopped working there. I hadn't really let them know yet about the studio because all this stuff takes so much time. Right. So long story short, I called out of work, and then my appointment got canceled. And I was like, score. Like I get an off day. Like, you know, I was used to teaching like 4 or 5 classes. And so I was like, oh, like this will be so great. You know, I just won't have the appointment. I won't work. And I had this like this convicting moment. Again, it's such a small thing. And for a while I failed to say this detail, but this is really what allowed true form to be true form. I was like, Kenzie, no, like you're going to be honest with your employer. You're going to call her. You're going to tell her, hey, my appointment got canceled. I can work. And again, it sounds so small, and it sounds so like, just, hey, that doesn't matter. Like you already called off. Right. So I text her, and I'm like, hey, I know I said that I couldn't work tomorrow. I actually can. My appointment got canceled. She calls me. Now, timeline wise, we had at this point, this is second week of February, we had found a location for what we were trying to create. Wow. And we were at like less than 24 hours away from signing a letter of intent, which would basically send us into lease negotiations.
Oh my goodness.
So I get a call from my boss, and she's like, oh my gosh, hey, like I love her. She was like, you know, let's catch up, let's talk. And in the back of my head, I'm like, oh, okay, if the conversation comes up, I'm going to let her know that we're going to open up one, just to be honest. Obviously it wouldn't interfere. It's really far from one another, her current Franklin studio. But, you know, I'll just be honest there.
Totally.
So, you know, she gets talking, and she's like, you know, Ken's like, are you sure you would never want to take over Franklin? And I was like, oh, you know, this was the pride in me that I was like, oh, like I was not even thinking take over, because in my head I was like, oh, I'm starting my own thing. Right. And so I was like, well, Anna, this would probably be a really good time to let you know, like, I'm actually opening up my own studio. Surprise. And she was like, get on a Zoom with us tonight. Let's talk about it. Like, I just want you to know what this would look like. I want you to know, you know, you could step into this with a lot of clients, and you could take over something and make it what you want it to be. Yeah. And so I was like, all right. So we got on a Zoom that night. And by the end of the call, they were like, I think you should do it. And, you know, I had my parents, you know, on the back, they were behind me, and they were like, Kenzie, I think this is a really good opportunity for you. And I basically was like, all right, God, like I need some confirmation. And so at the end of the Zoom, they were like, well, look, so it's February like 16th or 17th. We want this off our hands. What does 6 weeks look like? March 31st, and then announce April 1st. And that was going to be my 22nd birthday.
Oh my
And so
gosh.
I was like, oh my gosh, this is my birthday present. I'm going to say yes. We're going to do this thing. So, on that day is whenever we kind of like stepped into, okay, we're doing this. I'm going to take over. And, it was also hilarious because on the day that I was to, I'd take over, the day before March 31st, the day before my birthday, was my interview for grad school.
Wow.
And so I was just like, okay, that's not happening anymore. Totally great. Guess the Lord doesn't have me counseling human beings, which obviously I'm doing that in a completely different way now.
Come on.
But
That's good.
yeah, it's just so sweet because, the story in and of itself, for a while I didn't even think of it as a story. I just thought of it as the journey to get to true form. At the time, when we initially took over, I was Studio Novo Franklin for 6 months. So we didn't do our rebrand until October, into true form this past October. But at the time, I didn't see these little moments. And then, when I really took a step back, I was like, Kins, like, if you would not have been honest and texted your boss that you could work, you would have never gotten a phone call that you could, she would have never had that opportunity, because 24 hours later, I was going to be signing a letter of intent. Like, I wouldn't have been able to back out of that at that point. Like, that was a more binding agreement. Yeah. And so it really allowed me to, see how the little moments of our life build character like none other. Come on. And so, that's kind of the God story that led to it. Oh my gosh.
I don't know about y'all who are listening right now, but the whole time I know the end result, but I don't know why. I feel like I needed popcorn and I was like, wait, hurry. What's next?
I know. I feel like I've gotten to like build up the story now where I'm like, oh, I know when to get people.
I was like, hold on, you're a really good storyteller, because I was invested.
Thanks.
And I know the end. Oh my gosh, so Ken, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's so fun.
There's so much to that like, gosh, we can go on and on about, but I'm even thinking about the scripture that talks about God aligning our hearts with his will, and how was the Studio Nova manager, was she a believer?
I don't know. Like, we've never really fully talked about that. Like, I was her employee, but we did talk about like on that day, I know she like loves the Lord. Yeah. On that day we were talking and she was like, this is like God. I was like, no, like this is fully God. Like,
see, that's it.
Yeah. And what a light that is to like, I think we're so used to like a community that's so outspoken about our faith.
Right.
And then when you step into like the workplace, it's like, you don't know who's super outspoken about their faith, but then you hear those little things of like God and you're like, I got you, girl.
Yeah,
like, this is God.
That's so real.
Yeah.
That happens so often. But I'm even thinking about the both of you guys, like walking in the will of God, saying yes to the next thing, not knowing all the answers to what's the rest of the story, and how that manager was doing that same exact thing too. Like, she had those nudges to literally ask you. And what's really, really cool about this, and I want everyone to hear this part, is so many of That's Joy listeners, y'all are probably like in college, graduating college, just finished, whatever that may look like. But in that age group, I feel like it's so easy to feel underqualified.
Oh, yeah.
Especially by the world, because you don't have, quote unquote, enough experience. I mean, I can't even tell you how many doors shut when I graduated after application after application, because I didn't have experience. Yeah. And what's really, really cool about your story, and I hope that it draws so much encouragement for others, is that you didn't have years and years under your belt.
I had nothing. Like, I had a college diploma for psychology, and then a month of nannying. Like, that was it. And in college you have like internships, but those apply towards your major. And so, we could literally go a million ways out of just that, but like literally I had nothing. And I think that led to really where I am now. And I know we'll probably get here as we talk, but like, I think a huge thing that I struggled with over the first year was like trying to prove myself to just the idea of people know I don't have experience. Like, everyone who knows me knows that I am not equipped or qualified by the world standards for what this is. Like, I was sitting down with a financial advisor the first week that I took over, and I was like, I don't know anything. Like, I know how to sign a check and that's it. Like, I don't know what any of these accounts are. I don't know, I don't even know like what direct deposit is. I was like, tell me everything. I was like, sit me down and workshop me. And I think that is also a part of like just seeing how true form has flourished. It's just come from the like, I said this in an interview with someone one time. I was like, I literally, my story with this place and my leadership, it comes from saying I don't know. Like, comes from saying I have zero clue how to answer your question. I have zero clue how to do that right now. However, by the end of the day, I got you. I got an answer. I'll get it done. But I think we think that we have to. We are told, because nobody talks about this side of it, that you know everything before you step into something. And I knew nothing, and I still don't know a lot of what I'm going to have to deal with, even in what we're working towards right now with true form. It's like, I am continually like on Google, like, what does that word mean? Or what is this timeline? So I mean, we're all learning, we're all growing, but that's a huge part of my story, about my testimony, about my identity, is, you know, learning how to not have to prove because I didn't know. And I was in a season of having zero experience. So
your story is so much of the famous quote that everybody shares. We hear it all the time, but God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called, and he freaking qualified you because you're called to be in the seat that you are. I want to touch on what you just were talking about, though, just what that looked like, kind of needing and having to feel like you're needing to prove yourself. And that is a natural thing. And I would imagine that anyone in your seat would feel the same exact way too. Like, oh gosh, they just hand me the baton and I don't even know if my shoes are tied yet. Like, are you sure you want me to go, God? And so I get curious to know, after, I mean, it's been almost a year and a half now, which is very exciting. I'm sure there are peaks and there are valleys. And I think so often we look at people who have accomplished something like you have and think that it's just a huge mountain of successes and wins. But I think it's really powerful to be able to share some of those moments that maybe weren't necessarily a win or a highlight reel, because I think it draws to what we walk through every single day and what people go through every single day. So if you don't mind, will you share with us a time during this journey where it felt like the furthest thing from a win? And during that time, how did you lean on God in that season? Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. I think this will be my favorite question. Just because I love being an open book. I think more people need to be an open book, but it's hard to be an open book when you're literally sitting in like this wallow of like, oh my gosh, am I doing it well? Like, am I right? Like, am I on the right track? Like, what's happening? I think early on in my experience with just managing the studio, because again, as we started, we were Studio Nova Franklin, and then 6 months in we were True Form. But I kind of just embody it all as true form. So at the time, when I initially started, like, I was day in and day out, like really just a ball of just like, I don't know what today's going to bring. Like, I don't know if I'm going to have to learn how to fix a toilet. I don't know if I'm going to have to learn how to fix a machine. Like, these machines are basically like you have like car repairman, like fixing these things. Like, these are massive things. And I was like, I remember there was like 2 months in, I was like at the studio at 11 p.m. with a screwdriver, and I was trying to figure out how a screwdriver got into this thing, later finding out that it's the complete wrong. I needed like an Allen wrench. Anyways.
My gosh.
So I was like, from the beginning, I was constantly having these things where I was like, I do not know what I'm doing and I need to figure this out. And so early on, obviously I had those. I've had the times when, you know, I was supposed to schedule somebody for a private and someone showed up and the instructor wasn't there. I've had the times where I thought that I was, you know, I had found a sub for my class and I didn't, and people were at the studio without me. I've had times where, you know, instructors haven't woken up for alarms and I didn't wake up to their call, you know, whatever it was. Like, there's always been those moments, and there always will be those moments of like, oh, things are going to fall back on me. And that's never happened in my life before. I've always fallen back on someone else. Like, I've always called someone else in times of trouble in the workplace. And so from the beginning, those were always the little things. Like, there's always something like that. However, I think in thinking more about like hardship with this, I think I didn't realize really until this year that my life was kind of taking the back seat because True Form was always taking the front seat. So relationships that I cared about weren't getting as much of my like quality time or direct pursuit, or, you know, just my 100% of my mind being towards them or family, or no matter what it was, like True Form really was it for me. I would wake up at, you know, I had my ringer on by my bed at all times. I would wake up the second someone emailed at 4 a.m. or at 4:30 and I was responding initially. And then, you know, a call would come in at 6 a.m. I'd answer it. And, you know, then I would go and teach and I'd be at work from 7 a.m. to like 7 p.m. and I was literally always there. And then at night I was trying to get people off wait lists, and I was like literally running this one-man show, and it didn't have to be a one-man show. And I think that kind of just tangles up all into this identity piece where I didn't fully trust myself. Like I knew that I wasn't quote unquote equipped with experience. So I was like, oh, I'm going to set out to prove everyone wrong. Like I am going to do this thing. I'm going to do it well. I'm going to put all my time and energy. And I did. Like I put every hour of every day towards it. I would be on vacations with my friends, like on my phone, like, oh, well, you know, I need to get these people off the wait list. Like I need to do this, this, and this, which, you know, in the grand scheme of life is such a small part. It's so silly. Yeah. But for me, it was my life. And I was like, I want everyone to feel so loved, so cared for. I want to text these clients, let them know how much I love them. And so I was just always on work, always doing work. And it really fed into this complete idolization of what true form was and the success of it. And so I think the biggest hardship for me was I had someone I love so much look at me and say, you know, are you finding your identity in this place? And are you okay with like people just looking at you and maybe not seeing what you want them to see when it comes to how you run this? Like, are you okay with someone saying something bad about you? Are you okay with somebody saying, oh yeah, like Kenzie's young and immature, like whatever it may be? Like, are you okay with those things? Because when you become okay with those things is when you're going to be able to have a life. And it was this like, oh my gosh, it was not even that long ago. And so I think hardship wise, it's like, wow, I think my whole first year was a highlight reel. Like it was incredible. Like the best moments of my life were in that year. However, at the root of it, my life was not like how it should be. Like the Lord like obviously I was praying and spending my time with Jesus every day. Like, of course I am. But you know, work was always taking the front seat and work was always there first, and it became an idol and it became, you know, my everything. And so over the past couple months of just really being able to sit back and like be okay with being Kenzie aside from work, and like putting work aside, putting true form aside, knowing that it's going to run, knowing how to delegate, knowing how to lead well by entrusting the people that I employ to do it well too. Yeah. That's been so good. So yeah, I think it's been just a whole year of learning, a whole year of literally like every time I think I'm like, oh, I'm doing better, I'm like, oh, here I am learning something else new. So there's the little things of mistakes. And then there's like, oh, wow, like not allowing this to become all of me, because that's not okay. Yeah. That is a hardship. That is something I can't do.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I know that that's, like you said, vulnerable, and we need to talk about those things more and like be the whole book. And there's so much of what you just shared too that I'm like, gosh, so relatable.
Yeah.
So relatable. Like how often do we, maybe it's not a studio that we're putting as an idol in our life, or our business that we're putting as an idol in our lives, but maybe it's the next exam or school, or maybe it's a relationship, or maybe
a good thing to be focused on, right. Like a good thing to put your all into, a good thing to study, a good thing to, you know, or, you know, we kind of talked about this before, but it's like even allowing like full wellness to become your whole life. Like that can take precedent over the Lord any day. Like anything, any good thing cannot be a full God thing whenever you're not allowing it to, you know, take the backseat to your relationship with the Lord or your relationship with a friend or whatever it is.
Come on. Yeah. That's a quote card in itself. That's so good. Dang. There's so much. Thank you for sharing that, Kenz. Yeah. I think that also leads us to, like, you shared so much about other people's opinions and how it could potentially just take over if you aren't on guard. And so there's so much that you had to do that were honestly giant leaps of faith. I think that so much of your story, which is such a beautiful story, a God-written story, that's for sure, were leaps and bounds of honestly just taking action and leaping in with faith. How did you not let fear or the opinions of others get in the way of what you knew God was calling you to do? Like psychology major to, okay, God, I'm dropping all of that and I'm going to say yes to this thing that I know deep in my heart that you're calling me to do. And then what's your best advice to someone who may feel those nudges on their hearts? How can they answer that call?
Yeah. Well, I think if you were to do a timeline of my life, I think that the big moments in my life have happened really, really quick. But if you look back at the preparation to get there, it wasn't really quick. And I think that my mentor always says it, or she says it best. She says, you know, God takes a really long time to do something super quick. And when it comes to taking over the studio, I think specifically what I'm so passionate about sharing with people, especially like anybody I mentor or any of my friends that'll come to me with something, we take way too long to say yes. And we don't say yes because we take too long. And I was praying for years. Like I was praying and I had prayer over me since the time I was young, specifically stepping into high school and college. So like for a solid 6 to 7 years, I was praying so hard. Lord, what do you have for me? Lord, what is my purpose here? Lord, I know that I love to dance and I know I love to move. Like, I know I love all these things, but like, you know, what do you have for me? What is my calling? How do I speak to people? How do I love people? What is my mission field? And I was praying those prayers for 6 to 7 years. And then the opportunity to take over the Franklin studio happened in 6 to 7 minutes. And if I would have sat there and allowed myself to ruminate in the, oh, I need to like really take a step back, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think that there's a lot of really important moments of life where you do say, hey, I'm going to pray about this in this moment and not say yes yet. I do think those times happen. However, there are so many moments of my life where the preparation has been happening for years on end. And then in a split second, it takes that yes, or this opportunity is going to go to the wayside. Right. And so I think the only reason I was really able to step into it is because I had that preparation, and the yes was so easy because the peace was there from the preparation. So when you have preparation, you have peace. When you have peace, you have a yes. And I think to encourage other people, I think if we just did the thing and we said yes to the things that are good, like I do believe that God has good for us, and I do believe that God speaks to us, and I do believe that God can speak to us really quickly. And I think if we just said yes to more of the things that are going to impact his kingdom, he's not going to give you an opportunity. And if you are operating the Spirit, I don't fully believe that you are going to go and dishonor the Lord by stepping into another community or stepping into another opportunity in which you can make him known. Yeah. And so saying yes, doing the thing, me and my roommate, we say it, and we, you know, have this whole idea of just telling people like, just freaking do it. Like, stop sitting and wallowing in your weight. Like, actually do it. There's so much tension in the waiting. We're all aware of that. There's so much tension in praying and, you know, waiting and doing it that way and preparing. That is the best thing to do. However, when the opportunity comes, are we going to say yes? Yeah. Or are we just going to sit back and be like, oh, just wait for someone else to do it? So my biggest piece of advice is say yes. Some people may argue me on that. That's fine. I'm only 23. I'm sure I'll learn that there's things that I don't need to say yes to in life. However, right now I'm like, say yes.
This is your yes season. That's so good. And it reminds me of that quote that says, delayed obedience is disobedience.
So good. That was one that really in that season of my life, it was like, am I going to sit back and allow this to literally everything is lining up right? However, everyone else would probably sit and like, you know, we're told to just sit and wait and pray and do all these things, good things. But in that moment, I would have been disobeying. I would have been fully disobeying the Lord and my peace if I would have stepped back and said no.
That's it. It's the peace factor that you just talked about too, because you and only you know that deep inner knowing that I believe is the Holy Spirit nudging you, telling you, hey, I need you to say yes now. And it's like, you know, when you're just being disobedient because of that inner knowing, you know?
Pursue your peace every day.
Yes. Yeah. Pursue your peace. That also, put that on a shirt or something. So good. Yeah. That's awesome.
Put it on a hat, a trucker hat, pursue peace. There we go. We have a brand.
Honestly, that's for next season.
It's amazing.
All right, Kenz, the final question that I want to ask you is a question that I ask every guest on the show, and I'm so eager to know what your answer is. But what does joy mean to you?
Oh, well, I'll probably name my daughter Joy one day. So
no way.
I mean, how can you not? It's like the best. Like you're a bundle of joy. I love to be around people with joy. I think that before I say like, what is joy to me? Like, joy is a source, and that source is Jesus. And, you know, none of us have joy. We can have fake joy. We can have fake excitement and fake smiles. Like, we do that. Everyone has to do that at some point in their life. But, you know, Jesus is that source. And, you know, if I'm trusting in my source and I'm trusting that he is good and I'm trusting that he is God, then I'm going to live in joy and I'm going to live in love and I'm going to live in life, because I know and I believe that the creator of the world loves me and has truly formed me. And that kind of ties into like what true form is. We believe that everyone is true truly formed in their mother's womb, knit together, fearfully and wonderfully made. And if I believe that, then I believe in the joy of the Lord. And I believe that God is good. And so God is good. I'm going to have joy. So joy is a source. I think joy is the fuel to my day. And, you know, on the day that I don't have joy, that's the day I'm on my knees because I need some more of it. Because I don't think that, I can't go a day without the source of joy in my life. And so therefore I don't really want to go a day without being joy. I love that question because that's good.
That's really good. Oh, okay. Now, how the heck can we show up for you? Where can people get more of Ken's and this light and this energy on social? Yeah. And where can we take classes and what can we look forward to? Give it to us, all of it.
Yeah. Well, my Instagram is Kenzie and Stewart, and I really just post whatever and whatever. Like, it's just kind of my personal, highlight reel. Because they are highlight reels.
Yeah.
But then, True Form, I would love if everyone followed. It's trueform.fitness. And you can find us also on the internet. It's trueformfitness.org. And then we actually have our own app. So if you download the True Form Fitness app, you can access all of our class times, all of our instructors, all of our packages. And so we run an intro offer for all new clients, whether you're in Nashville or not, or just visiting one day. Your first class is $10, and then your first 2 weeks unlimited is $79. And yeah, we're doing a lot of fun stuff this summer, a lot of fun challenges, and obviously growing. So keep an eye out for us. We'll post everything on our social media. So trueformfitness.org is where you can find us, and then trueform.fitness on Instagram.
Awesome. You guys, hopefully we can all be in a class together.
I know.
If you're ever
I'm going to get Cece out there.
Absolutely.
She's going to be a new Trueform girl.
Honestly, I'm probably going to be a diehard, so I'm ready. Well, Kenz, thank you so much for your time and for sharing every piece of your heart with us. It was such a joy having you on the show.
Oh, so fun. Wait, that was so fun.
You guys, was that not an incredible episode or what? I am so grateful that Kenz came down to join us for the show. And honestly, she is just such a light. She is filled with so much joy. And I feel so grateful to be able to share her with y'all and to know her. If you are ever in the Nashville, Franklin area, you need to pop on over to True Form and take one of her classes, go to the studio, and just experience like what it looks like to be IRL with her in real life, because she is awesome, just as awesome as y'all know now. So anyways, if there's a certain part of this episode that really spoke to you or that you loved that you want me to dive into more, I'd love to know what that is. Shoot me a text to 615-813-4813. And y'all, if you're not following me on social yet, you should go do that. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at CCALBONERO, and you can follow That's Joy too at That's Joy the podcast. Friends, if you have not yet subscribed, rated, or left a review, or maybe you're new here and you haven't heard me say that yet, this is one of the biggest ways that you can give podcasters a virtual hug, and it's better than a Venmo. Honestly, it goes miles and miles further than what you might think. So thank you times a million for taking the time to do that. And I will never leave an episode without saying, if you have even the smallest desire to meet the creator of the universe, or if you've already been saved but you aren't really free, I want to invite you to sit at the table of plenty with me and so many others. I'm telling you, there's an abundance here. There's an overflow here, and there's so much joy here. I'm here to tell you that God's for you. All you have to do is invite him into your heart right now. He's waiting for you. He wants to meet with you. And friends, I'm so proud of you. If you just made this decision, I'd love to know you. Shoot me a text to the number in the show notes so I could be praying for you. I love you. God loves you. And until next time, I'll chat with y'all next time. Thank you so much for being here.